Please join me as I welcome our next speaker, Sanjay Poonen, COO VMware, to give us his insights on the topic titled From the Customer Lens, Tech Trends That'll Shape the Future. A brief introduction to Sanjay. Sanjay is responsible for worldwide sales, service support, marketing, and alliances. He is also responsible for the security strategy and business at VMware. Prior to VMware, Sanjay was the president of platform solutions at SAP AG. During his more than 7-year tenure at SAP, he held several executive level roles in product development and sales. Sanjay, it's over to you. Take it away.
Hello, NASScom conference attendees. My name is Sanjay Poonen, CEO of VMware. I wanted to talk to you today on the topic, what the tech trends that will shape the future. I recently wrote a blog for those of you who follow me on Twitter or on LinkedIn about my 10 predictions of 2021, which is going to be the core of my talk the next 15 to 20 minutes. And I want to take really a perspective of what I see happening in the world and what happens as I talk to customers. I have the privilege of talking to thousands of customers, many of them C-level customers in charge of technology, in charge of business. And the fundamental thing that is so clear is that 2020 changed everything. Last year, this time, I was getting ready to get on a plane to go to the World Economic Forum, which is this, kind of gathering, this pilgrimage, if you would, of all of these leaders in business and politics that come to a tiny village in Switzerland called Davos. And about 5,000 people were there. At that time, January last year, no one was wearing masks. There was no social distancing. We were all crowded in these conference rooms. I'm sure COVID was spreading its way through that village. I had friends who actually got COVID after the event. I came back. Fortunately, I've been okay. But it's amazing how so quickly things changed. Everything has changed in 2020. The moment we went into shelter in place in India, lockdowns happened. Everything changed. The way in which we work is now through Zoom. The way in which we communicate, the way in which we can't travel very much, the way in which we worship, the way in which we think about playing games, watching games, it's all different. And it's had tremendous implications on technology. It has tremendous implications on the future of healthcare. Telemedicine is an example. And the number one thing we've taken away from this is, first off, we want to focus on our employees, our closest constituents that are close to us, our family, and our extended family. I always told our employees, take care of your families. The profits of VMware will wait. But then if you've taken care of your families and you're doing well, let's then turn our attention to our customers. So happy employees turn their attention to customers. And in turn, when you serve your customers, great things happen. And that's what we sought to do. And that's really an incredible lesson. So with that, what I'd love to do is just tell you what these customers have been telling us. And I'll just walk through 10 of them in the course of the next 15, 18 minutes, and hopefully it inspires a few. If you want to read the blog, you can read more comments. I think prediction number one for me is this inevitable kind of, force that's happening of cloud computing. We are seeing workloads and applications being driven in this world of cloud computing. It's a $120 billion market for infrastructure as a service, growing about 35%. The top clouds are Amazon and Azure and Google and Oracle and IBM and Alibaba. They're all growing very well. But then the SaaS applications, which is a lot more applications focused, is a little smaller, $115 billion market, growing a little bit slower, about 15, 17%. And there's some big giants too. Salesforce and Adobe and ServiceNow and SAP and Oracle. And VMware has chosen to play a very central role across both of them. But we think this cloud computing, is really going to accelerate faster. But it's not just going to be the public cloud. It's going to be this pendulum between the public, the private, and the edge cloud. Recently, we had a case study I talked about at FedEx. This is one of the world's biggest logistics providers that is investing in edge cloud in many of their distribution centers jointly with our partner Dell. It's an incredible case study of how the future of the edge cloud is going to be as important as the public cloud. It's a smaller market, about 6 billion, getting to perhaps 10 or 15 or 20 in the next 5-7 years, but a very important and interesting market for everybody in manufacturing, in consumer packaged goods, retail, and a variety of industries that have branches and locations where they need to move some of the workloads and compute there. Prediction number two is I think cybersecurity spend is only going to accelerate. We had a few years ago WannaCry and Petra, and then towards the end of 2020, we had this SolarWinds breach. And many of these are nation state actors. It's almost as bad as a 9/11 as a terrorist threat. Now, people don't think of it normally that way because no lives got lost. But let me ask you, what would happen if a cybersecurity threat unleashed inside a nuclear facility and biological gases were emitted just because of some cybersecurity breach into one of those facilities? Lives would absolutely be impacted. There's certainly economic damage. We saw that with WannaCry and Petra, and there's economic damage for sure through the SolarWinds incident. But what it is teaching us is we as a village, as a world village, need to team together, fight the bad guys, because they did not stay idle through the pandemic. If anything, they were just going stronger and stronger, looking for ways to take advantage. And the SolarWinds one, we've studied it closely, is a very sophisticated one because it kind of came as a software supply chain embedded inside somebody else's code that you trusted. It wasn't like this malware file that you clicked on for a phishing attack. This was very sophisticated. So this requires a new approach, an approach that is focused on creating a zero trust security platform, not point tool after point tool. And that's something we've been focused on. And really kind of, working together with other key players in a platform approach as opposed to point tools. And then also really educating the world on cybersecurity hygienes. We began to educate people on, just like brushing your teeth, what are the key things you should be doing in this world of security to keep yourself safer that all of us could do. For example, multi-factor authentication. You could set up your passwords not on pieces of paper, on files sitting around, with a second factor that's your mother's maiden name or last 4 digits of your social security or your fingerprint, retina scan, whatever it is. That second factor is important. Patching your systems, segmentation of applications, or what also is even more sophisticated, microsegmentation. A variety of these things using encryption algorithms. These are all key things that we believe will make us safer. So cybersecurity is a key. It's an area that now VMware is emerging as a cybersecurity leader. Number 3, I think my prediction is that work from anywhere is going to become mainstream. We were one of the early investors in Zoom. It's an incredible technology. When I first saw Zoom, and I've gotten to know Eric Yuan very well, he's a good friend. I reflected to him. I said, listen, when we went through a crisis in 2008, the financial crisis, I was at SAP, and we couldn't travel anymore. We reduced our travel, and we basically were all huddled into these small rooms doing telepresence calls. And telepresence was this very sophisticated video technology that allowed you to get high fidelity video, but it was very expensive and extremely hot. And when I first saw Zoom, I said, wow, this is like telepresence on my phone. And that's really what they've innovated. It's an incredible platform that's applicable to consumers and enterprises alike. We're doing a lot with Zoom, both protecting them in terms of security internally, but also ensuring that when you use Zoom, you don't have any sort of potholes, if you would, in network traffic. And our network acceleration capabilities from VeloCloud, part of our NSX platform, is really a key part to the adjoint to keeping Zoom secure and fast. So you're going to see that. The one thing I don't know is this: in this sort of culture of work from home, are we going to see the countries that have had a culture of working closer together, especially in India and Japan and China? Would people be comfortable with the infrastructure support, people working at home? It's not easy, and sometimes in part of the work culture, working together and working in big offices is a key part. But for many people, even in my home country, India, these long commutes take you an hour. People are getting on buses to go to work, which 45 minutes to an hour. If it's possible to do some of that, you will certainly reduce traffic on the roads, which is good for the environment. But also, I think you'll get probably a productive and better family life, which is good for all of us. My prediction number 4, and this is a little bit more focused in the Bay Area, but I think this may happen even in other countries. There's been an exodus of companies out of the Silicon Valley. HPE, Dropbox, Palantir, a number of other companies. Oracle also announced. Now, it doesn't mean that they're completely putting their employee count to California to 0, but they've moved their headquarters. Now, part of it is because of state taxes and a variety of other, sort of situations of high cost of living, where with work from anywhere, they see a possibility of allowing the employees to work in Texas or wherever have you. I think that's only going to continue. Although there is a good silver lining for many of the new companies that are still, I am still a believer in these Silicon Valley hub spots, whether it's here in the US around the Stanford and Berkeley universities, or in India and Bangalore, or around the IITs there, or in Beijing or in Singapore, some of these core locations, I think that will still continue, but there's going to be probably a lot more interest in a work from anywhere and exodus out of just core hubs. And I think, for my home city of Bangalore, I hope this will ease traffic. One of the concerns that many of the foreign direct investments into India have is just infrastructure and travel and traffic within the cities. Hopefully, this spreads things out and allows people to not have to go into the office as often. I do think there's also going to be a rise of the local economy. That's my prediction number 5. And this, you see this phenomenon happening in every local place. I mean, people talk about Uber in the US, but there's Grab and number of other local services in various different parts. Grab in Singapore, for example. DoorDash was a popular food service, delivery service. Instacart, there's many such similar services in India that are developing local to the local city. And this is, the Indian economy is mixed with a number of these folks who are local, corner stores at the corner of the street. Where when I growing up, I'd go to the corner store and buy something. And many of those sort of village pantai, all of those village stores will now become something that connected to the internet or being able to be served through folks who can deliver food, going to become as important as the big brands like Amazon and others. Prediction number 6, I think there's going to be the rise of companies, certainly the ones that are not, I would say they're still big cap, but not as big cap as 1 trillion market cap. We saw a huge increase in these companies between 20 billion and 100 billion market cap. I could just rattle off 20, 25 of them in security, in observability, you can name them. And I think that category as a collection is going to become as important, maybe even more important than the trillion market cap companies, because the trillion market cap companies are going to have some restrictions because of antitrust regulations and so on that prevent them from making acquisitions, and then they only organically innovate, but some of those companies are not innovating fast enough. So I think these smaller companies that go from 20 to 100 billion, Zoom is one of them, Snowflake's been another one of them. These companies just came from nowhere in the last 12 to 18 months and have valued, many of them, well over 20 billion. I think that phenomenon is only good, and that's a really good sign for entrepreneurship. So for all of you Indian entrepreneurs or American entrepreneurs or Chinese entrepreneurs, any of these countries with large populations, I think this is a tremendous opportunity for new innovation. And quite frankly, I would love to see any of the other countries that have got large populations of engineers look to create entrepreneurial companies that could become big market cap companies and create wealth for their employees. Prediction number 7, I think there's going to be a whole new wave of ESG companies. Tesla is just the first of many that are going to be focused on environmental, social, governance, electric vehicles. And I mean, who would have predicted in the year when people focused on not traveling as much, you had this amazing company, Tesla, grow 700% in market cap. It's amazing. And I think that's going to happen in a number of other countries, not just in electric vehicles, in other areas, whether it's hydrogen, risk, solar, ways by which we can make this planet better for the next generation. This shouldn't be an economy that's just focused on oil and gas and the bad CO2 producing. I think the entire next generation want a cleaner planet with renewables and a variety of other things that's going to become mainstream, and ones where companies could not just talk about this as a futuristic concept, but also make a profit doing so. Okay, prediction number 8. Distance learning is going to become permanent. I think, this is sort of dovetails into working from anywhere. But the reason I think this is even more than work, I think it's also going to pervade schools. Clearly coming from India, education was a key part to the reason I've been successful. And we've, even if you were poor, I was middle class and lower middle class growing up, so I couldn't. The only way in which I was going to work myself into an economy was through education. And I love the science, the technology, the engineering, the math, all of that stuff, what people call STEM today. I was preparing as an 18-year-old to get into IIT, which is my dream, to get into a technical university. And I ended up actually coming to the US. I was going to go to IIT Madras, but I ended up getting a scholarship to come to Dartmouth College to do my computer science, and as a young 18-year-old came here as an immigrant on a scholarship. But the thing that I would reflect on education, if you look at Khan Academy and even some of these sort of tutorials that became very popular in India when I was growing up, Agarwal and brilliant tutorials, I think online education now is going to revolutionize all of that, not just for the prep effort, but also for the actual classes. And I think in the future, for schools, for example, I mean, if a child is sick, often the parents don't worry about it. They just send them to school and say, well, it's got a little cold, don't worry about it. But quite frankly, if you want to protect the rest of the class, and there's an ability for that child to be at home if they could, and take a 2 or 3 days of rest, and be able to connect into the classroom, because every classroom had the internet, had a microphone, had a camera, and the teacher was skilled at teaching maybe 80-90% that's in the class, and 10 or 20% that's virtual. Then we will build a place where people could be at home when they're sick, but not lose out anything. I think in college age, people are going to get a lot more comfortable. Khan Academy has proven that you could study a lot of things much, much faster at your pace. Some people are night owls, some people are early birds. Why force them into a class construct? There's going to be a lot more opportunities for distance learning that is lifelong. To me, the most important thing is having that growth mindset and having the notion that your brain's sort of a muscle that's always hopefully growing. Okay, we're down to 8 predictions. I've got 2 more. Number 9, I think that the notion of well-being, social events are all going to go hybrid in some interesting creative ways. Let's start with telemedicine. Okay, who would have thought that in the span of a few weeks, a lot of these regulatory pressures the world faced, but certainly in the United States, there were many of them, state by state regulations, they all disappeared in a matter of days and weeks of the pandemic. Because listen, there was no way, Dan, to talk to your doctor remotely unless it was an emergency. And that all began. Every medical, for example, in my dealing with the medical hospital, I can deal with my doctor directly through their app, communicate with them, set up a video call, and a lot of 95% of what I need, I could do in that kind of fashion without having to go in. And the same thing for my elderly parents. My parents are 81 and 78. A lot of their communication on basics and a lot of the metrics we need to kind of collect about our healthcare, whether it's blood pressure, whether it's cholesterol levels, some of those need testing, but glucose levels and blood pressures can be tested at home. And we can do a lot of these things to create greater life expectancy for our older folks. Obviously, encourage people to stay at home and still stay fit. I got to tell you, COVID made for me a greater bonding with my home, but allowed me to get more outdoors and do things with my home. I rediscovered. I always loved biking. I used to, as a kid in school, bike 5 miles to school every morning, and I loved biking later on in my 20s. And I rediscovered my love for the bike because I was now starting to bike with my kids. And whether using Peloton or some kind of biking equipment in your home, or just getting an old-fashioned bike, I think this whole notion of this, everyone going to a big gym will be there for some, but a lot of it's going to become a lot more local. Who knows what the future of worship and concerts and even sporting events. I think there's always going to be a great passion to watching a cricket game or a soccer game, or in the US, a football game or basketball game with whatever, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 fans. But even if it's spread out a little bit, I mean, listen, I could have a great experience occasionally going in there. Maybe it's a smaller crowd, not as many as 70,000 people, but watching it also from home. This hybrid experience is here to stay, whether it's health, whether it's well-being, whether it's concerts, whether it's worship. It doesn't mean that we're going to be permanently isolated. I mean, listen, there's been a lot of depression, unfortunately, and that's got a counter aspect of people really kind of going into a corner. We were made to be social beings, but I think it all has to be done in the context of knowing, some of these things will change, maybe permanently. For one thing, I hope, I used to travel 40-50% of the time. I hope that my travel drastically reduces, and I only need to go, whether it's to India or to Japan or Beijing or Paris, London, only when I really need to, and maybe my time at home and better sleep and all that good stuff lengthens my life expectancy, and I could have a delightful conversation with people even through Zoom, while of course wanting those times where I will meet many of my friends in person. Listen, final one is the way in which Hollywood, or maybe I could talk in Indian terms, Bollywood, is coming to the home. Not just have we become a lot more, all of us become consumers of I mean, death by subscription. I mean, there's so many different subscriptions now that you can watch, whether it's Netflix or Disney Plus or any of the news channels or whatever have you. And people are kind of disbanding their TV cable and just kind of going directly to the internet for content. But that's the consumption. I think we're also becoming producers. Think about this little production I'm doing for you. In lieu of coming in person, I've got hopefully a decent camera, a good microphone, a monitor, and now I've become a mini producer like CNN or some other news show to produce content. And video production is becoming something that we're seeing as a very a popular form of communication. 2-minute videos, 5-minute videos. In this particular case, it's a 20-minute video, like a mini TED Talk, where we can get our story and our key points across to our constituents. So there you have it, folks. I want to thank you for listening. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to the NASSCOM conference attendees. Continue innovating, whether you're here in the United States or in India. Innovation is what drives the world forward. The communities of all these countries, we're all connected by that desire to make the world a better place through unity and through peace. I wish you all the best. And as an Indian immigrant now living in the US and having strong ties with much of my family still in India, I wish India also the very best, all of you, for the rest of calendar 21. Take care and be safe.
Thank you, Sanjay, for letting us know what the tech trends for the future are and what skill sets will be imperative in the new normal. What were my takeaways here? Take care of your family and extended family. VMware profits can wait. The message that went to their colleagues, and that when you serve the customer, great things happen. The top 10 trends that we heard there: cloud computing, cybersecurity, WFA going mainstream, an exodus of tech companies from California, rise of the local economy, the rise of the 20 to 100 billion market cap tech companies, Tesla spawning at least 5 successful ESG companies, distance learning, the future of education, well-being, remote workouts, telemedicine, worship, concerts, sporting events, and Hollywood at home. All of this and more in that session.